Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Daily English Buddy. We are so incredibly happy to have you joining us today.
Yes, welcome back. This is your favorite cozy corner of the internet to practice your English listening skills, pick up some highly useful vocabulary, and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. I am Alex.
And I am Justine. If you are an English learner, especially around the B1 or B2 intermediate level, you have found the absolute perfect podcast. We do not speak like strict grammar teachers, and we definitely do not sound like a boring textbook. We just speak naturally, like two friends having a coffee and sharing stories.
Exactly. Our goal is to help you understand real, everyday conversational English. You don't need to stress about translating every single word in your head. Just listen to the rhythm of our conversation, absorb the context, and let the language wash over you. And today's topic is something that almost every single person listening to this will experience.
Oh, absolutely. Today, we are talking about moving to a new place and renting a flat in an English-speaking country. It is a massive life milestone, but it is also an incredibly stressful situation that comes with its own unique dictionary of terrifying vocabulary.
It really is. The housing market has its own language. But real quick, before we dive into all of our embarrassing renting stories and terrible apartment viewings, we want to politely remind you that we have created a completely free PDF study guide for this exact episode.
Yes, you definitely want to grab this one. The study guide contains all the essential renting vocabulary we will cover today, the specific idioms we use, and a really fun quick quiz to help you test your memory. You can find the link for the PDF right down in the description, so please feel free to download it whenever you are ready.
Perfect. So, Justine, renting a flat, or as they say in American English, renting an apartment. It is universally stressful, but when you move to a new country and have to do it in your second language, it is a whole new level of anxiety.
It is a nightmare because you are dealing with legal contracts, large amounts of money, and people who talk very, very fast. And it is so easy to make a mistake if you don't understand the specific words. Let's start with the two most important people in this situation.
Right. First, you have the landlord. The landlord is the person who legally owns the house or the apartment. And second, you have the tenant. The tenant is you, the person who is paying money to live in the property.
Exactly. Landlord and tenant. And the legal relationship between those two people is defined by a piece of paper called a lease or a tenancy agreement. And signing that paper is terrifying.
It is, because you have to agree to give them a deposit. For our listeners, a deposit is a large amount of money, usually equal to 1 or 2 months of rent, that you pay before you move in. The landlord keeps it to protect themselves in case you break a window or damage the floor.
And getting your deposit back when you leave is like fighting a war. They will try to keep your money for the smallest things. Oh, there is a tiny scratch on this wall. I am keeping 50 pounds. It drives me crazy.
It is the worst. But honestly, before you even worry about the deposit, you have to actually find a flat. And interpreting the advertisements online is a skill you have to learn. Because real estate agents love to use tricky vocabulary.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. The classic real estate tricks. Like when they describe a flat as cozy. If an apartment in London is described as cozy, what does that actually mean, Alex?
If an advertisement says cozy, it means the apartment is smaller than a shoebox. It means you can cook breakfast in the kitchen while you are sitting on your bed. It is tiny.
Exactly. Cozy is real estate code for extremely small. But I think the biggest vocabulary trap for language learners is the difference between furnished and unfurnished. This causes so many disasters.
Ugh, oh, don't even talk to me about this. I fell directly into this trap when I first moved to the UK. I completely misunderstood the word unfurnished, and it ruined my first week in my new home.
I knew you had a story about this. Please tell our listeners what happened, because this is a classic B1 vocabulary mistake.
So I was searching for flats online, and I found one that was a really good price. It said unfurnished. In my native language, if a flat doesn't have furniture, it usually just means it doesn't have a bed or a sofa. But it still has the absolute basics, right?
Right. You assume it will have a refrigerator, an oven, maybe some curtains.
Exactly. So I signed the lease, paid my massive deposit, and got the keys. I arrived at the flat with my 2 suitcases, excited for my first night. I opened the door, and it was completely empty. And I don't mean no sofa empty. I mean literally empty.
Wait, what was missing?
Everything. There was no refrigerator in the kitchen. There was no washing machine. There were no light bulbs in the ceiling, just empty wires hanging down. I had to sleep on the hard wooden floor using my winter coat as a blanket in total darkness.
You slept on the floor in the dark? Oh my goodness, Alex. That sounds like a prison cell, not an apartment.
It felt like one. Listeners, learn from my pain. In the UK and many other places, unfurnished means you get the walls and the floor and absolutely nothing else. You have to buy your own fridge. If you want a bed and an oven, you must look for a furnished or part-furnished flat.
That is such a valuable lesson. Furnished means the landlord provides the heavy furniture. You saved our listeners so much back pain with that story. But you know, finding the flat is only half the battle. Living there and dealing with a bad landlord is the real test of your English.
Oh, dealing with landlords. It is basically a full-time job. And this connects perfectly to our previous episode about complaining in a hotel. But when you are renting a flat, the stakes are much higher because you live there.
Exactly. In a hotel, if the shower is broken, you complain to the reception and they give you a new room. In a rented flat, if the shower is broken, you have to email your landlord and beg them to fix it. And they always ignore you.
They always ignore you. Do you have a landlord horror story, Justine? You must have.
Oh, I have a terrible one. When I was renting an apartment in a really old building, my heating completely stopped working in the middle of November. It was freezing cold. I could see my own breath inside my living room.
Oh no. No heating in November is actually dangerous. That is an emergency.
It was. So I emailed my landlord. He was a very grumpy old man who hated spending money. I said, politely, "Hello, my heating is broken. Can you please send someone to fix it?" He replied 2 days later and said, "Just wear a thicker sweater."
He told you to wear a thicker sweater? That is completely unacceptable.
I know. I was furious. But because English is my second language, I didn't know how to complain firmly without sounding crazy. I didn't want to yell, but I needed him to take me seriously.
This is a huge challenge for language learners. Finding the balance between polite and aggressive. What did you say to him?
I had to ask a native speaker friend for help. She taught me a magic phrase. I wrote him an email that said, "I am writing to formally request urgent maintenance. The lack of heating is unacceptable, and if it is not resolved by tomorrow, I will be withholding my rent."
Wow, withholding my rent. That is a very powerful, highly advanced phrase. To withhold means to refuse to give something. You threatened to stop paying him.
Exactly. I didn't even know if it was legal, but it sounded so professional and scary. And guess what? A repairman arrived at my door 3 hours later.
Of course he did. The moment you threaten their money, landlords suddenly become very fast. That is a great vocabulary word for our listeners: maintenance. Maintenance refers to the work needed to keep the flat in good condition, like fixing pipes or broken heaters.
Yes, maintenance is a crucial word. If the roof is leaking, you request maintenance. And while we are talking about money, we absolutely have to discuss the most confusing part of paying for an apartment: utilities.
Oh, utilities. This is a word that B1 learners often don't recognize because it sounds like a computer program. But utilities simply refers to the essential services you need in a house: electricity, water, and gas.
Exactly. And when you are looking at apartment advertisements, you must look for the phrase "bills included." If the advert says "utilities included" or "bills included," it means the cost of water and electricity is already inside your monthly rent price.
Which is amazing because it makes budgeting so much easier. But if it says bills not included, you have to set up accounts with the water company and the electric company yourself. And let me tell you, calling an electric company in a foreign language is a nightmare.
It connects right back to our phone call episode. You will be put on hold for an hour. So always try to find a flat with utilities included if you can. It saves you so much stress.
Absolutely. Okay, let's fast forward to the end of your time in the flat. You have survived the empty rooms, you have fought the landlord, and now you want to leave. You can't just pack your bags and run away.
Unfortunately, no. You have to give your landlord a notice period. This is a very important legal term. A notice period is the amount of time you must wait between telling your landlord you are leaving and actually moving out.
Right. Usually the notice period is 1 month or sometimes 2 months. For example, if your notice period is 1 month, you have to email the landlord and say, "I am giving my 1 month notice." And then you have to pay rent for 1 more month before you can leave.
Exactly. If you just disappear in the middle of the night, they will keep your deposit and probably chase you for more money. The notice period is very strict in English-speaking countries.
It really is. Honestly, renting a flat requires a master's degree in vocabulary. But once you know these specific words, the whole process becomes so much less intimidating. You can protect yourself from bad deals.
I completely agree. So, to make sure our listeners are fully prepared for their next big move, let's slow things down and do our buddy vocabulary recap. Let's review the key renting phrases we discussed today.
Perfect idea. Let's start with the two most important people in the contract: the landlord and the tenant.
Right. The landlord is the person who legally owns the property. The tenant is the person who pays rent to live there. For example, the tenant complained to the landlord about the broken window.
Next up is the big amount of money you pay at the beginning: the deposit. A deposit is money held by the landlord to cover any potential damages. For example, I had to pay a deposit of $1,000 before moving in.
Excellent. Now, what about the trick that left you sleeping on the floor? Furnished versus unfurnished.
Ah yes, a furnished flat includes major furniture like a bed, a sofa, and kitchen appliances.
An unfurnished flat is completely empty. You only get the walls and floors. Always double check before moving in.
Next is the essential services, utilities. Utilities are things like electricity, water, and gas. You should always check if utilities are included in your rent, or if you have to pay the bills separately.
And when something breaks, you need maintenance. Maintenance is the work of keeping a building in good repair. For example, I called maintenance to fix the leaking pipe in the bathroom.
And finally, when you want to move out, you must observe the notice period. This is the legal amount of time you must give the landlord before you leave. For example, my contract requires a 2-month notice period before I can move out.
Those are such incredibly useful phrases. If you know these words, you will sound confident, you will sound professional, and landlords will take you seriously.
They absolutely will. Well, we hope this episode gave you some great tools for the next time you are hunting for an apartment. And please don't forget to download that free PDF study guide. The link is right down in the description box, and it has all these phrases written clearly with extra examples, so you can review them before you sign any contracts.
Yes, go grab that PDF. It is super helpful. And if you enjoyed spending time with us today, please consider subscribing to our channel for your daily dose of English. Making English a fun, daily habit is the fastest way to reach fluency.
We would also love to hear from you. Head down to the comments and tell us, what is your absolute worst renting disaster? Have you ever had a crazy landlord or slept in an empty flat like Alex?
I really hope I am the only one. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on Daily English Buddy today. Keep practicing, read your contracts carefully, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.
Bye everyone, take care.